Welcome back to No Cape Required, the podcast where we celebrate the bold, the brave, and the beautifully authentic ways that women choose to live and lead without the pressure of being everything for everyone and wearing the Superwoman cape. I'm your host, Dara Rossi, and today we're diving into a little bit of a different topic, but one I think that is liberating. It's as liberating as it's transforming, and that is solo travel, particularly as a woman. So whether you have been dreaming of I don't know, quiet cafe in Paris or a soul-stirring hike through Peru or maybe just a solo weekend escape that's just a few towns away, traveling alone isn't about just changing your location. It's about reclaiming your voice, your space, and your freedom. We're going to talk about myths and the magic, because there's some magic in it, and the mindsets that really make solo travel not just possible, but I think powerful. From safety tips and confidence boosters to those really unexpected moments of joy and self-discovery. This episode really is all about saying yes to yourself, to the journey, and to the kind of freedom that doesn't wait for permission. So pack light, but bring your courage and let's get going. Wait until you meet my guest today. You're going to love it. Tsvety Roo is a solo traveler. She's also a speaker and a podcaster, and she's done all kinds of things. A designer, she traded her high earnings in New York City, this big career she had, for a one-way ticket to explore the world. I just asked her in a pre-interview if she just like takes a dart and just throws it at the map to see where she's going. So we're gonna have to learn more about that. She's lived in 22 countries. And she's visited, I don't know, like in the 30s somewhere. And she's had this sort of nomadic lifestyle, focusing on really connecting with people, connecting with the land and creativity and self-growth. So she had some fear, but she turned it into fuel. And she turned her loneliness into solitude and strangers into lifelong friends. And she'll tell us about some of the folks that she's met on her way. So let's don't wait any longer. Let's listen and get to know Tsvety Roo. So she may inspire us to break free from our own conventional living and, to embrace this lifestyle with curiosity and heart. So Tsvety, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you so much for that. I
Well, you're
cannot wait.
welcome. I get excited when I talk to you.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled about this already. Just
Okay. So you
thinking
had
about
this great career in New York City,
that.
right? You were designing, right? And so what inspired you to say, well, you know what? I'm going to be a solo traveler. Just going to start this journey.
Yeah, it was a process. I wish I could say that it was very strategic and thought out when everything, but what ended up happening is years of loneliness and feeling disconnected from myself. And so, even though on paper I had this amazing career, I was working for a great New York City agency, I had my own apartment, I had a lovely car, it was sort of checking things off the list of I've accomplished so much, but I still felt empty. And I couldn't understand why. And I tried to figure it out by throwing myself into different type of things. So I was trying to date and find a partner, and I was trying to be like in different workout classes and all of this. And I was basically avoiding asking myself three very important questions. And those three questions, they naturally came out when I took this long walk. I took this long walk in San Diego. I was living in San Diego, working for a New York agency. So I was remote. I was very lonely. I wasn't interacting with a whole lot of people because we're kind of working in our own silos at home. And that's what happened with the pandemic and that sort of loneliness that hit all of us in various degrees. And so I took this long walk, this meditative walk, and then I started to ask myself these deep questions that I have been avoiding. And I said, okay, Sveti, like, what makes you feel alive? So far, and I get very emotional. I feel like you can hear it in my voice and the
I
trembling.
can.
Yeah, it just takes me back to that place where it was so tough to dig inside and say, nothing else is working. Why am I feeling so disconnected? Why am I feeling empty and unfulfilled? And even though I'm doing everything right, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I've built up this life. And so I said, what makes me feel alive was my first question. And then what dream have I been stifling all these years? It was in there. It was deep. It was definitely inside of me. And the final one, which kind of gave me agency to act, it was, what if I gave myself permission to go after it? And so, yes, when I
Wow.
asked,
Wait, I just have to say, wow, wait a minute. Those three questions are so powerful
yeah, yeah,
because people listening may not say, "Oh, I'm going to be a solo traveler," right?
right,
But the questions, what makes me feel alive? I had to write them down. What
yeah.
dream have I not been pursuing? And what,
If I gave myself
oh,
permission
if I gave myself permission
to go after that dream.
to go after that dream. Wow. Okay. So, what happened when you ask yourself these three
It
questions on this long walk?
Yeah, it was this long walk in San Diego, which is lovely. I mean, it was a beautiful day, and most of the days in San Diego are. And I was so lucky to live there, but it was so contrasting to how I was feeling inside. And then I asked them myself, and it just floated up that I have just wanted to travel, to get out there, to learn about different cultures, to explore. And I said, I feel like my life is passing me by, and I just I have to do this now because I'm getting in my late 30s, and there's something about like feeling old, which is, we can also talk about that for ages, that stigma that, people have, like, oh, you should have your life together and you should do this. But then when I did, I felt so empty. And so I just said, I have to make a big change. I'm going to answer these three questions, and travel was always the one. And it took me another 9 months to actually book it.
Oh, okay. So
Because it
didn't
was
you didn't
over
sell everything the
vacation.
next day and start traveling?
No, no, because there's always the fear. And so there's just so much fear, and there's so much, like getting out of your comfort zone is so tough to do. And I can say this now, having traveled for 2.5 years, having put my stuff in, all of my belongings in storage, and I sold that car, and I quit the job, and I started on a completely different lifestyle. And it was very scary, because I did like the security and the comfort blanket, that all of those aspects, having one place to live, and, just having this traditional lifestyle has its benefits. But then I didn't understand yet, until I started traveling, the benefits that came from solo travel. Hmm.
Wow. And you've been doing it now 2.5 years, you said,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I first,
So
yeah, when I first started, I thought I was going to be gone for 3 months.
I
When I
was
put
gonna
everything,
say, did you like just let me go for the weekend here and then I'll come back? No, you put
oh
everything
no.
in storage. You went for it.
I went for it. And most people don't have to do this extreme. I felt like it was needed because I had tried everything else, and then I needed that big shift in life. And I didn't want to have this sort of like, okay, well, I have an apartment, excuses to go back to the old life. I didn't want to have those excuses, and I didn't want to make it easy. I wanted to make it hard for myself to go back to that previous life that wasn't working. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my intention with jumping in, doing a one-way ticket. And
That's
so
commitment.
that's commitment, yeah.
Yeah.
And one-way ticket, putting everything in storage. I didn't sell the car right away. I kind of left it at a family's place, my cousin's place, but that I ended up selling that later. So it was just a huge jump. And, you know, from those first 3 to 6 months, I was doing a lot of countries. I was changing a lot of places a bit too fast, I would say. And I was just starting to feel comfortable in this sort of unconventional lifestyle. And the benefits is what I want to talk about, because I
Yeah.
feel like
What
this
are the
trend, yeah,
benefits?
Yeah, this transformation has been amazing. So I'd say the three biggest benefits for me as a solo traveler. Number one is embracing the solitude. So interesting enough, the loneliness that I was attempting to escape or trying to kind of rectify, uh, transformed because of solo travel, transformed into this solitude, which the definition between those two, loneliness is a feeling of lacking and disconnection and emptiness, and you feel unfulfilled, and all of these sort of, uh, tiring and exhausting feelings. And solitude is you're embracing that time with yourself. You are taking it's a powerful sort of, I'm taking this time for myself. I am doing this trip. I'm reconnecting, and it's a sort of rejuvenation of you and your values and what you feel about the world and how how you're starting to connect back more with the world and yourself. And so that transformation was incredible. And I had no idea that it would happen because then I was like, oh, I'm going to be lonely the same way that I was before, just now I'm going to be in a new city. And I had very low expectations. I wouldn't say it was, there was not a whole lot of positivity, but that's kind of saying how much of a negative place I was at, how deep and dark it was in the beginning. And
You
sort
know,
of
Sveti, you've kind of
transforming was great.
blown, I'm sorry, didn't mean to
Mhm.
interrupt you, but
Yeah.
you've kind of blown this idea, these societal pressures. We have to get the good job, we have to make good money, we have to have the right apartment, live in the right city, have the right partner, have children, right? To
Yeah.
be happy and be fulfilled. Right. We talk about this many times on this podcast that we don't have to fit in that form for us to be happy and live and lead authentically. And so you've just said that, and I love that you explained the difference between solitude and loneliness because they are
Mhm.
two total different words, and solitude
Yeah.
can be a great thing. So, so you learned how great solitude was and the value you brought to you. What else have you learned about yourself or
From solo
found value in?
travel, yeah, and when most people hear solo travel, they automatically assume that I just, like to be by myself all the time. The second biggest, it was the meaningful connections that I made on these travels, the people that I met. They really, the connections are so deep because there's a theory for this. So when I started to travel, and I would meet these people, and I didn't know how long I had with them. And so you're very present when you meet the
Mm.
strangers. And so when you're very present, you're becoming vulnerable with them, and you're opening up because you're just like, oh, I don't know, we may have today, we may only have tomorrow to sort of see, and there's a curiosity there. So the more I learn about them, the more I understand that wherever I go, we are so connected. We have so much in common. We have similar worries, stressors, and even, sense of humor. They're just sort of people connecting in different ways. And I've done for the listeners, how I met some of these people was I did walking tours. They're free most of the time in the big cities, especially in like Europe and Asia. So I would definitely sign up as soon as I get to a new city, sign up for a walking tour. They're about 2 hours or sometimes just an hour and a half. And then you meet fellow travelers, and then you kind of figure out, who you connect with. And then somehow it ends up, just recently, I was saying before we started this podcast that I met someone from the UK when I was just in Ljubljana, Slovenia. And we ended up spending 3 days together. And we had met at that walking tour, and we went to dinner and we did wine tastings and we really bonded. And it was sort of like, wow, I would have likely never met this person. And now we have such an incredible Slovenia story that we share. And it made such a lovely trip. And so there's time that you can sort of take for yourself, which that's another thing we can talk about is I go to restaurants alone and I enjoy my own company and I put the phone down and I'm really present. So in both of these cases, it's coming back to being present.
I love that. We have a pretty famous researcher here in Texas. Her name is Brene Brown. You may have read or
Yes,
heard
I
of
love
her.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
she
vulnerability.
talks. Yeah, and she talks a lot about connection. And she says
Hmm.
we are wired for connection. And she defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they're seen and heard and valued. And that's what you were just talking about. It might be a short bus ride, or it
Mhm.
might be 4 days on the side of a mountain in Germany, or
Yep,
whatever.
exactly.
But you're building that connection because they're feeling seen and valued and heard. I think we're losing some of that connection right now with
We
folks. We're
are.
connected. I'm using air quotes if you're not watching us. Connected all the time, right? With a phone or whatever. However, we're chatting with people, but we're not really connected.
Yeah, and it's that real intention to be there for that person. And I think what's happening is I keep saying like put that phone down. Just just look
Just
up,
be.
have
Mhm.
this conversation with the strangers and so when I hope others are my mission is to inspire others to take that journey into solo travel and really embrace it. When you do start to solo travel, the easiest way to put off people is to kind of be on your device the entire
Mm.
time. So being open to your surroundings, to the environment, to being open to kind of making eye contact with someone, let's say, sitting next to you, so that conversation can start, so you can make that connection is really key. And I think just putting the phone down, as simple as it sounds,
Step one, put your phone away. Okay. So
especially
we
when you're
talked,
traveling.
yeah, we talked about solitude so that you've learned to
Yes,
embrace the solitude. Then we
yes,
talked about the connection, how you
being
can connect with
connection.
people and the lifelong friendships that you've made now. And you said
Yes.
there was a third lesson for you.
Third one is your relationship with your fear and my relationship with
Oh.
my fear. So I know that I mentioned that it took me 9 months to actually start this journey to book the first flight. And it's one of those things where I thought that I had to wait until I started to feel a bit comfortable with the fear. It never got there. I mean, the fear kept getting bigger and bigger until at one point I said, like, this is my dream. This is the what I've been stifling. Going back to those three questions that I had asked myself, I'm giving myself permission to go after it now. So this fear is coming with me. It's the suitcase, it's the backpack, it's me and the fear. All four of us. We're going on this trip. And what ends up happening from my experience of doing this now 2.5 years is that that fear begins to shrink. You become more confident, you become more resilient. And all of the different challenges and all the different countries and the different places that I've stayed and the different people have taught me that the fear is really, we're creating it.
Mm.
And then we just have to have it sort of slowly diminish and diminish and diminish.
Yeah.
And so it just shrinks. And so that's my third lesson from all of this is because
I
now it's kind of like, okay, you're don't wait. Do not wait for that fear to go away. Just go for it. And then eventually it's gonna
Pack
get
it in the
smaller.
suitcase, take it along with you. I love that.
Exactly.
There's kind of a saying of, do it afraid. Just do it afraid. Go ahead and be afraid
Yes.
and just do it. So that's what you're talking about. Now,
Yeah.
there are some things probably we need to be a little fearful of when
Yeah.
traveling, but not the
Right.
fear of going out on your own. So, going down dark alleys, staying in places that are not safe, those kind of things. I'm sure you have some tips for us on how we could stay safe if we decide to.
I,
Most people are not going to go out and leave and go for 2.5 years and don't know when they're going to return or where they're going to go, right? But even
exactly.
just going for a weekend somewhere by yourself, or a trip to Europe for 10 days or something like that. What do we need to think about and be safe?
From a safety perspective, I mean, most of the things are common sense. Follow your intuition. You're not going to go down dark alleyways in your city, so why would you think that's a good idea in the new place? And I do a lot of research. I call, now that I mentioned before the podcast started that I have now a lot of international friends, a lot of fellow travelers, a lot of solo travelers that I met. So I've built sort of a network where I can say, okay, I want to go to this country. I've been meaning to go for the last 2, 3, 4, 10 years. And I reach out and I do my research. Which neighborhood is, for maybe at night is sketchy, so I should avoid. And so I asked, like, what do you guys think? And I do so much reading online, reviews, Airbnb reviews, booking.com, whatever and I always filter them as like the worst reviews first.
Ah, okay.
The worst reviews first because they're the most honest. And so I don't kind of waste a whole lot of time looking at all of the reviews. I just go to the lowest scores and I kind of get a most honest idea. So research 100%, have whether it's people that have already been there or online, lots of forums. There's so much information out there. And then from a female perspective, I think it's really important not to seem like timid or kind of looking around in a scared way. Just when it's all kind of the body language. I'm very aware of what kind of body language I have. So whether it's a new place I've never been before, I walk with intention. Put those shoulders back, walk with intention, like you know where you're going, and you just kind of visualize I'm a local, like kind of say like I'm a local. I've been here before. Like this is good. And I think that energy really helps with kind of people being okay, that she doesn't seem like a frail victim-like tourist, and so there's something there. I don't get wasted or like completely drunk. Like you just don't put yourself in a vulnerable spot. So not only are you, so those are the three main things: the research, doing your homework, then obviously like your body language, not seem kind of frail and like disoriented and easy, not creating yourself as an easy target. And then a third one, basically kind of uh, having the confidence to walk with intention, feel like you're local, and have that mindset of being sort of, yes, I can do this. I'm confident, and I think that is going to take you a long way.
And then to not putting yourself in vulnerable situations where maybe you had too many
Right,
glasses of
exactly.
wine or you have
Yes.
to depend on someone to get you where you're going, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yes,
Well, it
and
makes perfect sense.
yeah, like some of the people that are just kind of screaming across the restaurant, they've had too many drinks.
Mm,
That's You're just making yourself a target in a way.
sure.
And especially if you're a single lady, that's just kind of like, wow, put a huge exclamation mark
Right
above.
above your head.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Well,
It's all
both of us
common sense,
today,
really. Yeah.
what's that? Go ahead.
I was going to say it's all common sense and
Yeah.
following your instincts and just kind of everything that you would normally do. It just in a way where you keep awareness of your surroundings as well. I have a quick story about this. I was in Thailand and it was a sort of meditation retreat that happened. And there was a point where they took us to our location, to this, it was a shared sort of lodge, and it was very much secluded in the mountains in northern Thailand. And my roommate was fascinated because I remembered somehow that it said staff house in front of one of the houses, and I was able to navigate us back. And I think that's a training now that I've developed over the last 2.5 years, that I just remember really important self-awareness environment markers that I take, and that's also something that I feel like people should just be aware of your surroundings. Not like not be, constantly looking over your shoulder by any means, but just kind of know, pay attention.
Pay attention to signs and geography and yeah, where you are at all times. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, you and I both today, we both have our ponytails in or our hair back, right? We're ready to go and do anything. But I like my round brush, my blow dryer sometimes, and all my things. And I need a bag for my shoes. I'm assuming you didn't pack up everything you own and take it with you. So, what is it like? You can tell us more places that you live and where you stay when you're traveling, but
Yeah.
where's all your stuff?
Well, what's left of it is in a storage unit, and there's not a whole lot left.
So, what do you travel with?
So I travel with, I started with a one big suitcase and a backpack, and now I'm roughly a smaller kind of carry-on suitcase and a backpack that I did for 2.5 months in Asia. You it's a really great shedding into going into the minimalist lifestyle. So yes, if the hair is important, you can expand to having two suitcases. Like whatever your comfort level is for traveling. But just know that most of the time, especially like people that I travel with, if I'm traveling with a family member, I was just visiting my sister and she's just like, I didn't wear half the stuff that I packed. And that happens so often. And I look
Yeah,
at her and she looks at my bag because I pack really light these days. And she's just like, what is happening?
yeah.
I have a really like strong attachment to a few items, like these beige pants that I love, and then these black sort of like kind of yoga pants or so. But I've really limited it down to like 5 items, and everything else. If I buy something, I have a tendency to just kind of let go of something else or donate it, so not accumulate.
Yeah, so simplifying
Hmm.
your life and that minimalist. I love that. I'm joking about the round brush and the shoes and all that,
Oh
but just to
no,
make a
that's
point, right? That
exactly, yeah,
we have a lot of stuff we don't need.
exactly.
We have a lot of baggage internally and externally, right? That we're carrying around.
Yes.
So this shedding that you talked about as you shed, has that helped you internally as well, like in
Yes.
self-discovery?
Yes. It's that we have such a strong tie to the materialism aspect of our lives. Like we think that just because we need that walk-in closet and we need all of the pairs of shoes and I'm signaling out the shoes especially because that was a very early question from one of my friends. I think I was traveling a year in and she looked at me and she's like, how many shoes do you own? I said, I think about four. That's, and I wear them out now, which I didn't used to. I wear, not to product place, but like I love them. I love Tom's shoes. I yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Tom's shoes they're my fave, and I beat them to death.
Yeah.
And that's a testament. Like I love those shoes, and I have. And they're very practical, and I walk around all these cities and discover these different countries. And so when you shed that to four pieces of shoes, and I said, well, what there's this huge marketing that happened for all of these years that you need a different shoe for a different outfit, and that will make you feel better. But at the end, the value that I have towards traveling and traveling light, so I can be flexible. That's much stronger than having that walk-in closet. So
Now you're connected to people instead of things.
people, experiences,
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
and those three things are just so much more powerful and more fulfilling for me than having a big closet full of shoes.
Yeah, so it makes it easier to shed the things when you know the reward is on the other end. Now, I
Yeah,
will argue that a great pair of shoes can make all the difference sometimes, but that's another story.
yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us, I want to hear some of the stories. I know we talked
Sure.
about them prior to in our pre-interview, but tell us about somebody that's just remarkable that you met and your life is just so much better for it.
Yes. So the I love so many people that I've made different connections with. I'm going to say my Australian friend who I met in Malaga, Spain, and that was my first destination. That's the one that I did that one-way ticket to, and Spain was a country that I visited before, so I felt like it was a bit safer to go. I've never been to that city. I still didn't know a single soul when I went to Malaga. And that first month I was still figuring out how to travel alone. There was a lot of like, what am I doing? There was an internal turmoil initially. That was like, did I make a mistake? What's going on? But after meeting my friend, we met at a wine tasting, and in right away it felt there's such a connection. We she's Australian. She grew up in Australia and chill in South America, and now she lives in Spain. We didn't grow up in any country close to each other in any shape or form. But we were instant friends, and we met on the last day that I was in Malaga, and then I invited her to come out to Greece 3 weeks later. We had only spent 10 hours together. And when you're thinking like, wow, we had wine tasting and everything. And so the funniest story is, I don't know, but I just felt like she is such a amazing person, and we connected to such a level. And I remember my family saying, who is coming to visit you in Greece? And I was like, oh, my Australian friend. And they're like, but you know her for 10 hours. And I said, what? And they go, what if she steals your stuff when she comes to visit? And then I was like, well, I'll cross that bridge when we get there. And so she comes through the door and she says, I just got off the phone with my mom in Australia, and she said, what if Sveti steals your stuff?
Moms worried about their kids. Yep.
I was like, oh, that's what I just heard from my family. I was like, okay, there you go.
Oh,
They
that's
value
funny.
our stuff more than they value our really like us. But no, it was just hilarious. She just the first thing that she said when she walked through the door, and then since then, I've been going back to Malaga. So through her, I feel like I feel safer every time I go to Malaga because she lives there. And so that in itself, I've met some lovely ladies through her in Malaga, and it starts to, I feel like I make mini communities when I make
Mm.
such deep connections, mini tribes all over all the places that I've been. And
Oh,
I have
that's lovely.
so many these type of stories where you meet randomly. We met at a wine tasting, and then I met a lovely Finnish girl just in the middle of the plaza in Portugal. And then I met I was at an entrepreneur event here in Bulgaria, and I met an amazing friend. So it doesn't matter where the setting is. It just make sure that when you go and you're just being open to these connections.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, probably the thing that what's on my mind, and maybe our listeners too, is like what are the places that you stay, and where do you get the money to stay in those places? Because you gave up your job that you had, right? So,
Yeah.
how logistically how does it work?
So I don't stay in high-end resorts, that's for sure. I am not I'm not like those fancy influencers online, and I don't really aspire to be, because I feel that if it's a fancy resort in Portugal, or if it's a fancy resort in Bali, they all look the same, and they're all lovely, and you have your like swim up infinity pool, but then you're not really embedding into the culture or really understanding what that country is about. And so I just went to Bali and I stayed in homestays, and they're much cheaper and super affordable. And what it is, it's a family run property, and they do maybe 3 or 4 rooms with a bathroom, and it's individual, so you do have your privacy. But they live there. The family lives on the premises, and the roosters cawing at 3:45 in the morning, and the kids are running around in the backyard, and that was really special, because then they make you breakfast, part of like the package of staying in a homestay, and they can run sometimes as cheap as 30 bucks up to 50. And I was trying to keep it low. So 35 bucks a night is what I ended up spending. And this was this past January. And so you can have a very affordable, you don't have to do hostels all the time. I do so sometimes when it's expensive. I also do freelance work as a graphic designer because it's great. So there's some money there, but I'm also like super budget friendly.
Right, but
Mhm.
you're not tied to some place. You can work anywhere and
Exactly.
do your graphic design and
Yep.
make money. I had friends who did this, and they would travel, and then they would end up on a farm, and they'd work on a farm for a week,
Mhm.
sleep there, make some money, eat some great food, right, and meet some folks, and then travel somewhere else. So there's lots of ways to do it, right, and make money,
Exactly.
and you're not out buying shoes and things you don't need, right? You're spending it on travel and experiences and meeting and connecting with folks, right?
Yeah, and I'd have to say that I have been, um, even though I was stifling my dream for so long, I was in a way living very modestly for many years in a sort of uh, unconscious preparation for this type of lifestyle, I think. And there's something about that because I was recently thinking about this. I said, I could have had a newer car and I could have had a bigger apartment and I could have spent more money on shoes and whatnot. But there's something about that, like, for the people believer in the universe and whatnot. But I think I was preparing. I was living minimalist, not as minimalist as I live now, but there's something there. And so if the desire is within you and you want to have these experiences, maybe you do kind of scale down and have a roommate. And then that way it provides some more money to stay longer on your vacation. So maybe you, for example, the friend that I just met in Slovenia, he loves to work for 6 months and then kind of take a pause, do like a 3, 4 month pause, and then do his travels, and then come back to working again in a new job. Like to him, he's not attached to a specific company, a specific job. So he just sort of, this is what's important to me, and I need to do this. And so
So he
that's how.
works to travel. He works
Correct.
so that he can travel. Hey, so there's what I hear, there's so many ways to do it, right? If you have
Exactly.
the desire. And the first thing you have to do is figure out if you have the desire. And I'm going back to those three questions you asked because they're so powerful.
Thank
What makes you feel alive?
you.
Wow, the first one. And then what dream have you been stifling or stifled for a long time? And then if you gave yourself permission to follow that dream, what could
What would
happen?
happen?
What would
Yeah.
happen? What would happen better than could happen? What would happen? Because you're looking at the possibilities. I love that. And for you, it may be solo travel, it may be something else, but I encourage my listeners here to ask themselves those questions and see where it settles in there. Any last words that you want to share with our listeners today, Sveti?
Oh, I I'm just I hope that this does inspire, like you said, whether it's solo travel, whether it's something else, just inspired people towards going after that dream. And because living just sort of to continuously check off what you should be doing and other people's expectations and what you feel like life has to be a certain way, or you're putting that pressure or society's putting that pressure. I've been there. Please come to my website. We can have a session about it. I can tell you all about how it's so tough to overcome that. But once you do, there's amazing living to be lived.
Yeah. And
If
I'll
that's
have your contact
dramatic.
information so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
so
know
much for that.
grammatically correct. That wasn't the best, but
It's real. We're real here, right? Yeah. Whatever comes out, comes out.
okay.
Oh, Sveti Roo, it has been a joy to have you here. I
Thank you,
really,
Dr.
really
Star.
appreciate it. I know our listeners got something out of it as well. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye now.